Late at night, I tune into the airwaves, searching for a voice to take me away. I stumble upon Joshua Moroles podcast with special guests, Judge Mando Marroquin and Lance.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the sesh. Today I got a special guest. Judge, please introduce yourself.
Hey, how you doing? Mando Marroquin. I am a guest here with Josh. I guess he doesn't know me that well that he invited me to come and speak. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. How do you like the studio? Because I don't think many people, they only see these sections when they're seeing the video. What were your first thoughts of when you walked in?
My first thoughts were, wow, this is pretty amazing, guys. If you ever have an opportunity to come and check this out, guys, there is art everywhere. There is all kinds of cool stuff. And I can tell that's why you're so productive and maybe creative, because you have nothing but creativity around here, man. This is awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I just don't invite anybody over here, so you can't just come knock on the door and just for everybody out there.
I'm privileged then, man. I feel it.
I appreciate that. No, but the reason why I wanted to have you on today is because I feel the landscape of the world is changing, and I feel like there's not a lot of mentors out there. There's not a lot of leadership, and you're from a very specific vantage point. You get to see a lot of people. You get to deal with a lot of people in a very, I guess, in a high level, right? So you put judgment upon them, right? So I wanted to get you on here to discuss leadership, because I'm trying also to become a better leader. I want to become a better leader in the community with a nonprofit that I joined, as a business owner, and just be a general person that a good leader in the community, right? So I wanted to ask you, what are the skills that a leader needs? Because you are at a top level, right? You oversee a lot of people. What are the skills that a leader needs to have? I don't know if I'd say at a top level, but I appreciate that, man. I got you fooled. So skills that leaders need, I would say first and foremost, I think what a good leader needs is the ability to listen. I think we come across too many people in this world nowadays who want to speak, but nobody wants to listen to what anybody has to say. And the only way you can lead is whether or not, well, I shouldn't say the only way, but one of the ways that you can lead is by listening to those who you're trying to lead, getting their feedback, and being able to maybe change your approach with certain people, move in a different direction based off the feedback you're getting from those who you're trying to lead. I think it takes patience. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm talking about myself. I don't know. But patience is big. Obviously, I think some people think that you need some arrogance when it comes to leadership, but I actually believe you need some humility when it comes to leadership. I always appreciated those who were more humble than arrogant, but that's I guess my preference. And more than anything else, I think to be a good leader, you need to be willing to lead from the front, not from the back. And I think that kind of is what separates those who bark orders as opposed to those who want people to follow them. I got you.
And I think there's a big difference between those who actually are running into certain situations from the front as opposed to in the back telling everybody, yeah, go that way, and I'll watch you from here. That typically doesn't work as well as when you're in the front and people see you and they're willing to follow because they know that you're going through with it.
Yeah. What is it about experience that most people will not pay attention to? Because I'm assuming that you have a ton of experience and you explain this is how things work. This is how things work. For me, example, when I lost a lot of weight, I was at the top of the mountains, this is what you got to do. You got to do this. You got to do this. You got to do this. And I found out that nobody wants to be told what to do.
Very much. I'll tell you, that's a great point. Experience. Well, everybody has some type of experience, maybe not the kind of experience they want. But you mentioned something earlier, and I think it's really important, I think in any industry, which is finding values and finding people who you can somewhat emulate, who you can look up to. There's always great in any industry to find a mentor, right? Somebody who has done well, or somebody that you can look at and say, man, I want to get to that level, or I love what they're doing. And finding the right mentor, because quite honestly, there's people out there that while they might be where you want them to be, they're probably not going to be the best mentor for you. And that in itself is an entirely different conversation. But I would say when it comes to experience, I remember reading this a while back, and I thought it was really interesting. I think it was a book, gosh, what book was it? I can't remember exactly what book it was, but anyways, the gist of what this book said was choose to take advice from those who have experienced what you're going through, as opposed to getting advice from someone who's never been never been through what you're going through. And that really hit home with me because, especially in the business world, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to come to you and they're going to tell you what you're doing is wrong, right? Yet they might have never owned their own business.
True.
They might have never done what you're trying to do. So I guess it begs the question: should you listen to them?
Yeah.
I'm sure they mean well, but do they really know what they're talking about? And I think that's unfortunately sometimes what we have to do is take a step back and say, okay, who am I listening to, and why am I listening to them?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because anybody can offer advice. Like, I go outside and ask somebody for an opinion, and they'll give me their opinion. It doesn't necessarily mean it's correct, but yeah, you're right. You really do have to filter through a lot of people.
You do.
And I don't think people really understand that you have to filter through a lot of people. It's just not you're talking to like 10 people, like ask 100.
Right.
And if you find somebody that's within your unique industry, then that's who you follow. Because I found that first foremost, that I had to go through all the stumbling steps of business to understand, like, oh shit, 99% of people don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Unfortunately, what's that old saying about opinions and a certain body part? Right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of truth to that. And it's in every industry. I don't care what industry you're involved in, whether it's law, whether it's banking, whether it's even pro sports. I mean, I'm sure everybody has to go through that because everybody feels like, well, I know better than everybody else.
For sure.
In reality, and I think that's where some people go wrong. That's where picking some of your mentors sometimes is really can really derail your success if you pick the wrong ones. Because if they lead you down the wrong path, you're never going to get and end up where you want to be, right?
Yeah, you could waste years of your life.
And unfortunately, there are many that do. Yeah, there are many that do waste years because they're following the wrong path based off of what somebody else told them.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's good to get a lot of feedback and information from others, but at the same time, everyone's different.
For
right?
sure.
I think we learned that over the years. Everyone's different, and so human experience would tell you just because I'm different doesn't necessarily mean that might not work for you, but maybe it's going to work for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's how I had to restructure. Is like, this worked for me, it might work for you. Instead of saying, you got to do this, you got to do this. This works for me, maybe it'll work for you. Try it.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think I live my life now. When I turned 40, I started treating my life.
40?
I'm 42.
God, bro. I wish I looked like you when I was 42.
Like, yeah, the fountain of youth is found in diet and exercise, lifting weights.
Amen to that.
I found that. But going back to my thought is, it's an interesting thing to see that you cannot just tell people what to do. You have to show them. You have to inspire them first and foremost.
I typically find when people ask for advice. I know my wife and I have had this conversation before. It seems like when people ever ask you for advice, they just want you to agree with what they are. They already know what they want to do. They just want you to say it.
Yeah.
Right. So half the time, if you give someone advice, they're not going to listen to you. Right. Or actually, I would say probably 75% of the time, they probably won't listen. I don't know if it's a human nature. I don't know what it is.
Humans like to do things the hard way.
They do, a lot of it. And I'm one of them. Trust me. I learned the hard way. I learned the hard way. I don't know how many times my parents told me don't touch that pan, but I would still touch it.
Yeah.
So part of it, and maybe it goes to the experience, like you said. You've got to learn. You've got to experience it yourself. And then you realize, okay, maybe that's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Let me learn. Maybe I should go back and rethink this and learn from what somebody else was telling me, right?
Yeah. The most interesting thing that I found is it's hard to find mentors. And it's hard to find mentors that will give you their time. So
that is true.
With the advent of AI and ChatGPT, I recreated all of my mentors and created specific GPTs for them. So I ask them questions. I research with them every single day. And I don't know if that's like a weird thing, because when I talk about this, I feel a little off sometimes, because I'm like, I can go out and actually have mentors in real person, or I create them online and they're
Let's think about it this way, Josh. So we talk about maybe talking to mentors, right? Going back to ancient times, you had let's say in ancient Rome, ancient Greece, right? You have the philosophers,
Sure.
right? Then they followed, and you would go and you'd pick somebody. This is my guy, and I'm going to go learn from this teacher, right? Fast forward nowadays, you're right. Some people are not willing to give their time. However, there's a lot of books out there too, right? And I could kind of compare to what you're doing to like reading a book in some ways, because if the information's in there, you just have to go find it, right? And so whether it's an autobiography, whether it's a biography, or whether it's just a book on a subject matter that you like, I mean, there's so much information. I mean, that's the difference between nowadays and back then. You can go online.
Yeah.
You can get everything you need. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to read books. You can do what you do, because it's got all the information for you.
Give me the information, yeah.
And it's going to give you the pin, like it's going to give you the actual...
The bullet points. Because I need those.
Yeah.
I need those bullet points.
Not everybody wants to sit down and read a whole book, right? But that information's out there, and it's been recycled so many times. But unfortunately nowadays, some people just don't look at that stuff, man. But it is important, because guess what? As the world changes, for some reason, some of those things still remain the same. Maybe not all of it, but there's a lot that still remains the same.
For sure, yeah.
Right?
And you think about that too, is like just 100 years ago, people were riding around on horses. Like think about that. Like 100 years ago, I'm 40. So I mean, that's a relatively small amount of time.
And I think they still do in some areas.
Yeah,
right?
down the street of my house,
Street,
they're
I was
still
gonna
out
say,
there.
where I live, man, they're always out there, yeah.
But it's an interesting thing to see how fast society moves forward, and then inventions and
Very much so.
innovations and stuff like that. It's mind-boggling.
So I will tell you, cell phones is a good example. When I was graduating high school in the 90s, I won't say when, but I'll just say it was in the 90s, I didn't have a cell phone. I think at the time we had beepers.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I remember that. I had the pen beeper.
There we go. So you think about that, and then even when phones first came out, trying to communicate with people, instead of text message, there was text message, but it was called like T4. I remember something like that. So literally you had to go on there and match. I don't know if you remember this.
The ABC.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really
that.
frustrating for me. I wasn't some people could just text message like crazy on those things. I never could. But if you think about how things like innovation, how it's changed over the years, and in such a short time, it's amazing. It is truly amazing.
It's mind-boggling.
Well, think about the TVs. I mean, I remember, televisions, these big old blocks that I used to have at my house.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, they're paper thin.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, my parents used to have the big screen TV that was about this wide.
Right.
So
and that was
wider.
big screen.
Yeah.
And that was big screen. Now that might be considered normal, because some of the big screens you see now are like the size of a wall.
Yeah.
And they weigh, I mean, like nothing, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's insane. It really is.
Let's jump back onto on the way leadership is thinking, because I think this is an important topic. When in your vantage points, the way you're trained to I guess assess problems and complex problems, how do you specifically how do you address problems? How is your thinking, your frame of mind when you have a problem, big problem? How do you dissect that, and how do you come to a conclusion?
So typically when you're dealing with the law, you've got a written rule, right? So whether it's a statute, whether it's common law, there's typically something written. Then what you have to do is you have to take on all the information that you're being fed by a lawyer, by a litigant, whoever it is, and you've got to decipher through some of that and see where it fits in with the law, right? So that's a lot of dissecting and all this other kind of stuff. Obviously, when you take on more complex cases, right? Because everything's simple when you break it down to its smallest forms. Mm-hmm. Complex, typically for me personally, that's what I have to do. I've got to like break it down into little small sections to get to the answer that I need to get to, because inevitably everything is every case is small. It starts off with small points that go with the law.
Okay.
Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. So when they're complex, I have to break it down that way, because it's easier for me to do that way.
For sure, yeah.
I wouldn't say that everybody does that. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are brainiacs who can kind of work through that, and they don't have any issues. I unfortunately am not.
Yeah.
Right.
And when it comes to more of like the data of it versus like the empathy part of it, how do you separate those two, or do they come together?
So, it's interesting. They have this thing called the Lady Justice. I don't know if you've ever seen Lady Justice.
Yeah, I've seen it. I'm not sure.
Right. Okay.
Familiar.
So Lady Justice is a lady who's holding what is it? I'm trying to remember what she has in her hand. I think she's got a book, and then in the other hand, I believe she's got the scales of justice, and then she's wearing a blindfold. Mm-hmm. The blindfold is supposed to mean that justice is blind. We don't take any empathy. We don't take anything else into consideration. It's just the law versus the facts, right? And we put the facts into the law, and then that's how we make a decision. But we're human. And that can be very difficult in some cases. Very, very difficult in some cases. And I can tell you that the cases that I have the hardest time with 100% all the time are family cases, because we're dealing with children a lot of times. We're dealing with two people who unfortunately don't get along anymore and are obviously wanting to not be together. They're fighting over property, they're fighting over kids, they're fighting over all kinds of stuff. So that can be very difficult, because I've got to remove the, hey, I feel sorry for one side or the other, because I've seen what they're going through, I understand what they're going through, and just say, okay, how do the facts apply to the law? And it's really,
so it's like black
simple.
and white, yeah.
It's supposed to be that simple. Sometimes it's not. And if there were any cases that keep me up at night, it would be those. Yeah.
I can imagine, because I mean, we are just human. Like, everybody has a human experience in this life. So yeah, I mean, you're either a father, a mother, a brother, sister, parents. Like, so it's very cyclical of how people think. And I think one of the most important things about, like, social media, I'll go for example, is like a lot of it's psychology. Like the way a lot of people put their best stuff forward isn't necessarily how it is,
That's, what is it? The expectation versus reality?
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that is there's a lot of psychology that plays in when you're an attorney and you're representing somebody, whether or not you go in front of a judge or whether or not you go in front of a jury. Their psychology might change on how you represent them in front of those two separate, a judge or a jury. Picking juries, there's a lot of psychology that goes into that. Right? Trying to figure out who's the best fit for this case.
Wow.
So there's a lot that plays into that. Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing, because like the masters of psychology on social media, like Elon Musk, they know how to pull the little heartstrings and stuff like that.
Oh, he knows how to do it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Isn't it mind-boggling that we have SpaceX right here in the Rio Grande Valley?
What's interesting is, and I don't know if everybody has maybe gone out there and seen it, but it's. My wife took my boys. I've got 3 sons, and this is when they first came down, and I think she went into an area she wasn't supposed to, because eventually a security guard showed up. But they were out there when they had just came down, and there was this huge rocket that was out there at the time, and it's probably nothing compared to what they have now. This is when they first came down, but I don't know how many people from this area have actually gone down there and seen what they've done. Like, it is truly amazing. And then all the money that's being invested into that area is amazing. I know that the school district, in my understanding, had gotten some money from SpaceX.
Yeah, from SpaceX.
Because they're,
Brownsville,
I was going to say Brownsville, and I want to say there might have even been an economic impact on this area in Hidalgo County as well, only because there are certain people who are actually living over here and drive to SpaceX every day. On top of that, I know there was a few people here that were actually working, I guess when they were building some of the facilities over there that are from this area, that are driving down every day, working on whatever they're building over there. I don't know what they're building, but then they'd come back over here. So it's had a huge economic impact on this area, for sure.
Yeah. So you're, from your vantage point, like, you're seeing this, like Elon Musk is coming down, and I'm seeing now that there's a lot of big companies coming down. And I saw that Hidalgo and Cameron County are investing tons of money, like in the hundreds of millions, in the internet infrastructure.
Right.
What do you see on your end, like, from people that are coming from out of town? What's the word?
Well, so if you go back to, let's say, which was really important, is back to, at least for the courts, during COVID, right? So during COVID, the courts closed down. And what was really big for us was to try to continue to have court. So luckily, the state leaders came together, and locally, we had some local leaders that came together, and they were able to work out something to where we were able to have court online.
Yeah.
Right? Well, the reason that's important to what you're talking about was some of the people who live in rural areas were actually able to connect and connect to the court because they actually had internet access in some of these areas where before they never would have.
Wow.
Right? And so unfortunately, you had some people who actually had to call in on cell phones because their area still didn't have internet. And I know there was also a big push from the state, if I remember correctly, too. I think VTX was like real big in getting out there and like really laying lines everywhere.
Yeah,
oh yeah. And this area, if you think about it, I want to say, is it McAllen that you can get free internet in certain areas?
It's out
right
there now,
downtown,
yeah.
I think, or something like that.
Even around here.
Even around here?
Yeah.
Is that right? So, I mean, I hope that eventually that's what it gets to, because if you think about it, everything's online now.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you have access to online, you have access to not just here, but you have access to the world.
Yeah.
And so that's what's really important, right? From our vantage point, though, it was really big only because it allowed us to continue to have court. And for some people, I think before that, unfortunately, some people they would have never been able to continue with their cases. Those cases would have been put on hold up until they were able to actually either show up to someone's office or show up somewhere where they could actually have access.
Wow.
So that really helped out a lot.
It's an interesting thing to see the digitization of the Rio Grande Valley that's happening, because I think the White House said that by 2030, they want to connect every single American to the internet.
To the internet.
So think about that. Like the digitization of the economy is here. Like it's coming full speed.
I would say someone who is maybe in your profession, right, who does what you do, is at a huge advantage over those who don't really understand this, because it's coming, whether you want to or not. I mean, it's coming if it's not already here. You having enough knowledge to be able to navigate in that area, I think gives you a huge
It's a huge advantage,
I would say, over a lot of people. Unfortunately, at this point, we have a lot of people who still don't really use the internet.
the digital divide.
Right. And so, as you said, by 2030, if that's here, what it really makes me wonder is what's going to happen to those who get left behind.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's going to be scary. And I'll tell you, during COVID, when we had to go online and we were doing stuff, through our computers, it was difficult for some people to do that only because they're so I hate to use that word, right? But they're illiterate when it comes to their computers.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm not that savvy, but I was able to turn my computer on. So that was step one, right?
Well, you're not too far, because I feel like a monkey sometimes just clicking buttons.
Clicking the button. I was able to do
better.
that. Yes, I was able to do that, but there was a few who were just completely lost.
Yeah.
Right. Even turn on the camera, everything else. So that's actually, I think, moving forward, going to be a huge issue, I think, for a lot of people. Plus, you have all these local businesses who eventually are going to have to get online as well.
Yeah.
Right. Because if they realize the economic impact that's going to have on their businesses, where, hey, you're not just going to sell in McAllen.
Yeah.
You can sell your stuff all over the world.
All over the world.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to open up huge revenue streams for a lot of these businesses.
Yeah.
So that's why I say someone like yourself, who can hopefully open their eyes to that, I think is great for our area.
Yeah, I've been trying since 2016.
I can imagine. I know.
It's one of those uphill
Some are easier
battles.
than others, right?
Yeah, some are easier than others. I think it's just that divide, right? You get your older demographic that doesn't want to learn anything new because they just don't want to take the time.
Right.
And then also the newer people that graduated college that have already a skill, and now they have to upskill again.
Yeah.
And then the younger demographics, they're already in the internet, but they take it for granted. So it's a very interesting thing.
They're on social media.
Yeah.
But just to go look at pictures.
Yeah, true.
Or post, right? But not necessarily seeing the economic side of what you could do with social media.
For sure.
Right.
And think about that too, is because you're very prominent on social media. You consistently come out on social media, educating and informing. So you already have a huge advantage. And this is what I tell a lot of business owners, that if you're the business owner, for one, and you're willing to come out in front of the camera to educate, inform, and or entertain, you're already way ahead of everybody else because most people aren't willing to do that.
Very true.
Do you see that on your end?
Oh, very, very true. Yes. I will say that we started doing videos back when I was in private practice, but now that we do videos since we're in court, and the reason that we wanted to do videos was just to inform the public. Look, people are scared to go to court. I completely understand. If you're not used to going to court, if you don't have an understanding of the courts, then I can understand why you'd be so scared. So our objective of doing the types of videos that we did was just to inform the public, like, hey, this is what happens, right?
You're not going to get arrested as soon as you walk in.
You're not going to get arrested as soon as you walk in, right? Even little simple things like, hey, this is where you can go get more information if you want to read up on it. We just felt that it was important to explain to people because we had so many people when we started who were just scared out of their minds, and I understand why. Right? They've heard horror stories.
Yeah.
And so, there's a little bit of the transparency thing too, where I know that we've actually posted a few times, stuff that's happened in court. And it's funny because even with some of the informational videos, we'll get some clicks on it, but I think the videos where we're actually in court and stuff's happening, those are the ones that people seem to be more
engaged,
inclined to watch. I guess, I don't know, maybe it's a Judge Judy thing. I don't know what it is, right?
Absolutely.
But people just enjoy that much more. But we just want to show people like, hey, my biggest thing in court is I don't want people to waste their time. I don't want to waste lawyers' times. I don't want to waste litigants' times. I want you to come in, be able to resolve whatever you need to and then get out. And I remember in private practice, that was one of the things that really frustrated me too, was all the waiting that I had to do, right? And I'm not going to talk about any of the court. I just talk about the one that I'm involved with. And that's kind of our goal, is to try to get you in and out as quickly as possible. Make sure you take care of what you need to. And then you can go back, on to your day. Right? Go back, whether it's working, whether it's school, whether it's taking care of the kids, whatever you need to do. But that's our objective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
And I think you're absolutely right, because the only way you can build a strong personal brand or business online on social media is to educate, inform, and or entertain. Any of those three, you put them together, like that's the foundation of social media. Just education, information, because people will always need it.
Very true.
They need to be educated. They need to be told what to do. And the crazy thing about this too is, you might find somebody that is in your industry that is out there talking, that talks really well, that talks about the industry, but they are not as good as you. So the person that sticks their flag in the ground first and takes up that audience share is going to be the person that people are going to look for when it comes to that. So that's just also a scary thing too.
Is that kind of like the Coke Pepsi? Who came first?
Something like that. What came first?
Came first?
But it's a true thing.
I didn't really do it for that. I'll be honest with you, Josh. I mean, our biggest concern when we first got there was, so let me explain. So when we first started, we started actually during the pandemic. So we took the bench in County Court 10 in 2021. So it was right in the middle of the pandemic. You know what? I probably won't. I probably should mention this, but I will. So what happens is there was 8 other county courts. There was 2 that were created, 9 and 10. All the other county courts were allowed to send us cases. So when we started off with cases. Well, the interesting thing was when we first started, we were trying to figure out what we were doing, right? And as we went through it and spoke to people, especially the litigants, who weren't represented by anyone and stuff like that, what we started to realize is like, hey, we need to try to share some information, right? And that's kind of part of how we wanted to start off being there, which is, and I guess what you said, right? We're sharing information. Maybe entertain a little bit, because I know we've done some videos like the burrito eating challenge and some other things like that, right? But it seems like the ones where we're in court and people actually get to see what happens are the ones that people are most interested in. But it was a trying time, only because starting off, you're thinking you're going to start off and go into court and you're going to be able to resolve a lot of things. And unfortunately, we were online for about, I don't know, maybe a good 6 months or so. And then we finally decided, like, hey, we need to get back. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to get back before some of the other courts. And because we were able to get back, we were able to take care of a lot of more things than online. Because unfortunately, when it's online, we had some people who were using, like I said, cell phones, but they'd be in bed. Unfortunately, we had one, I think, that was on in the restroom. We had some interesting things, right? I mean, and we try to tell people like, hey guys, this is still court, even though you're at home, it's still court, right?
Yeah.
Like, so there was some interesting. I'm sure there's a lot more stories out there on interesting stuff that happened. I never had the cat. I don't remember the cat story.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he wasn't a cat, but I never had that. Thank goodness. But there was some interesting stories of people when they first got on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess yes, maybe to what you're saying, but the intent was not that. Our intent really was just like, hey, let's get as much information out as possible so that we can make people feel a little more comfortable before they come in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's interesting though too, because you think about it, like you think about all the different industries that are out there. There's not really a leader in that space that's going on social media all the time talking about that industry. Like how many industries are out there? Tons. And how many people are actually a personal brand talking about that industry over and over and over and over again?
Well, what I've seen recently down here, and I mean, I'm happy about it, is I've seen more and more people in the legal field, I would say lawyers in the legal field, who have actually started to share information with people online, which I think is amazing. I think in the past, the attitude was don't share too much because then they won't need us. Yeah. But my take always was like, well, no, I'm going to share more so they know, like, okay, they feel comfortable. So when they come in, I'm comfortable in my skill and what I can do. And hopefully that I'm going to exude some confidence when they come in to talk to me because they saw a video and they'll say like, oh, okay, yeah, I want to go with you. Yeah. So that's been interesting. But I think what's more interesting is we haven't seen as many people come out yet with this, but I'm hoping in the future that more people will start to share more information about the courts and everything else that happens there. So that way, again, people need to feel, they don't need to be scared when they walk in, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't want them to walk in, super excited either because you're having to come to court for something, right? But at least a little bit of calm, right? Yeah. And I'm hoping that moving forward that we'll see more people start to kind of do some of these things. Because I know what we try to do as well is we were trying to interview or get interviews from some other people who are involved with the courts, whether it's the clerk's office, whether it's the bail bonds, whether it's the district attorney's office, whether, just different things that deal with the courts, so people can see like, oh, okay, I've seen that one before, right? But we'll see where it goes.
In your experience, out of 10 people, how many people are actually comfortable on camera?
Oh gosh,
just you.
I'm not even comfortable on camera, to be honest. But I've come across a few. Out of 10, I would say maybe like 1 or 2 that are like, yeah, no problem.
I'll go,
give me a script and I'll read it for you, right? But it kind of seems like at the beginning, every time we start a video with someone who's doing it for the first time, after about 2 or 3 takes, they get into a rhythm, right? And I think that's what it normally is going to take someone. Like, hey, go through it a few times, and then you're going to get into your rhythm. You'll be fine. Yeah. And then obviously, the more videos you do, the easier it gets.
For
right?
sure,
it's kind of like getting on that bike.
Yeah.
For the first time, you might be a little wobbly, right? But then eventually, it gets easier.
Yeah. I talk about this all the time. Is that a lot of people need to master the art of the 60-second video. Try to get your points across in that 60 seconds in an engaging way. If you get it down to 30 seconds, even better. Because we're competing with goldfish now. I think we have 10-second attention span versus a goldfish.
If that, it might even be. I want to say I read something that it was even shorter now, only because of look at TikTok. Yeah. But TikTok video, I don't even know how long those things are, but they're quick.
Yeah, they're fast.
They're super fast, right? But that's hard for me, and I'll be honest because, my wife always yells at me about this, but I just have a tendency to like over-explain things sometimes. She's like, just make your point.
Just get to the points.
Which is great that these can be edited.
Yeah.
Right? That's the great thing.
Yeah, I think the people want some context. You feel like you have to get some context.
I always feel like I have to because you're not going to understand the whole story. Right. But apparently half the time the context
give me the thing.
Just tell me what it was. Yeah. I get that a lot. I don't know why.
In a world of social media where everybody has an opinion, everybody has thoughts, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Well, I tend to respect everybody for their opinion. I might not agree with them, but I think that's unfortunately what has happened with social media is that, because I don't agree with you, now I don't like you,
Right.
or now I'm going to want to fight you, and online of all places, like,
Yeah.
I have yet to see one person win a fight online. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you have. You've done it longer than I have, but I've just never seen anybody get into an argument online and win that argument.
Yeah.
But I want to say it's good to have an opinion. I don't think there's anything wrong with having opinions, but I just think that the other side of that coin is, then if people don't agree with you, people automatically dislike you and want to fight you and all this other kind of stuff. And that, I think, is unfortunately maybe where it's headed, or where it's. I don't know if that's where it's headed initially, because I don't think it was like that initially. I don't
definitely
ever remember
not,
like that. But now it seems like it's a different story, and you hear all these things on the news now. And unfortunately, every time you read something, there's always detractors, right? There's always going to be somebody detracting, And so I was told this long ago. I was told this by a friend of mine. He said, look, you're not going to make everybody happy. As a matter of fact, you could run into a building, or you could run into a burning building and save a small child and run out. And there's always going to be somebody who's going to find something wrong with what you did. Yeah. And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, they're probably going to say, well, why didn't you save more of the children? Yeah. Right? Or couldn't you have gotten there quicker? Yeah. And so that really that's always stuck with me, right? Because you're never going to make everybody happy.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because I had to come to terms with that. As like at the beginning when I started having a podcast, I would kind of keep it a certain style. This is what I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to deviate away from this stuff, because I have clients, in their schools, their churches. Yeah. And the last thing I want to do is be an extension of what they are, right?
Right.
And I found out that most people don't care. Like, people are living their own lives. They're living their busy life. The last thing they want to worry about is somebody else's problems.
Very true.
So I figured, it's like, you know what? Let me just go and be authentic. Let me be my authentic self. And then if I cuss on camera, well, I cuss on camera. I cuss in meetings.
Right.
So it's like, I feel like nowadays the people that are drawing that line in the sand is like, this is what I'm about. And people can either come on me with this journey or not follow. Do you see that on your end?
And I think that's the... I don't want to call it the ripple effect, but I think that is what actually has happened from, I guess, call it the opposite of PC, which is, we had so much PC a few years back, and I think people are saying, like, no, man, I just want people that are real.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? You feel this way, let me know about it.
Yeah.
Right? I think people respect that more than
putting it on the facade.
Facade cookie cutter, sorry.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, I would respect that more too, me personally, but it can be difficult on social media, only because we're not just open to this area, right? Yeah. You're open to the world.
To the world.
Right? And so because you're open to the world, you don't know. I mean, we could talk, I don't know, let's say we talked about a dog today, right? Some people hate dogs. I don't know. Maybe they're cat people. I don't know, right? But unfortunately, you'll get people that'll go on there and say things, and you have to have that thick skin to be able to say, like, hey, they're entitled to their opinion.
Yeah. And YouTube is the worst, man. I use YouTube quite often, and people don't care on there. And Twitter too is
I try not to read the comments on YouTube. I just watch the videos. But you are right. Yeah. They are vicious.
Yeah, vicious.
Right? What are they? Trolls? I guess.
Trolls. Yeah,
trolls.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of trolls out there.
Yep. So the advent of AI, I find this fascinating, because I've dived into this quite deeply, and I even changed a lot of the way I do things because of AI. In the world of misinformation and information bombardment, right? Eventually, going into the election year, we won't even know what's real or what's fake on social media, especially with the presidential candidates.
Yeah, very scary.
Like, what do you see on your end coming from like the courts and stuff like that?
Well, so this is interesting. I heard I was at an event last week, and there was a couple of judges that were talking about this. And one of them pointed out, they said, look, the issue with AI is this. AI is only as good as the people who program it, right? So I think he said a few years back, there was a couple of cases that came out where there was some attorneys who prepared some briefs using AI. Mm-hmm. So AI, I guess they put a bunch of information in there, and AI, I guess shot out these briefs, and they went and they submitted them to this judge. So the judge is reading these briefs and comes across a couple of cases in the brief. So the judge goes to look up these cases, because the judge wants to read some more on these cases. Well, AI made up the cases.
Wow.
They weren't real cases. So apparently the attorneys got in a bunch of trouble. It was this big old thing, right? But it goes back to, I think, square one, which is they're only as good as whoever programmed them, right? Whoever gave them as much information as what they need so that they can do what they can do. I know, I know that there's a lot of people who like to use it for messages, I guess, and text messages, or I guess even letters now. People will you can I mean
You can differentiate.
I think you can differentiate. Look, not to say that some people aren't super educated, but I think sometimes the words that are used in there, you're like, wait a minute, did you really write this? I've never heard you say ameliorate before, but all of a sudden you're using it in a letter. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
You know, so that I guess I think it has a purpose, but I'm curious to see whether or not people kind of overuse it.
Yeah.
And it goes down like a kind of like, that's like a slippery slope to me, because if you start to overuse it, then are you really using your head? Right.
Yeah.
Which we should.
Yeah.
And then I don't know where it can lead us to. I don't know. A Terminator, I guess.
It's an interesting thing because now you can clone voices. Like I started cloning some of my clients' voices because I found out that a lot of people don't like to come out on camera. So the way I do this, I don't think people really understand that this is out there yet. Is I'll have them come on camera. They'll do the intro video, and then I have them read a full script. So I'll put that script of an MP3 into AI software, and it clones their voice. So now I can type out whatever they need to say. So I use the intro, and then I'll use B-roll to put over it, and then I'll just type out the script. It reads the script, and then they do the outro. With that, I found that there's a lot of unethical things that happen. Like I think the other day I saw something on the news saying that a guy used their boss's voice to say like racial slurs and stuff like that. So they found out it was AI, but that's where the ethical part of the use of AI is going to be. So I created an agreement for businesses that can now sign. They'll have each employee sign that this is what their voice is going to be used for. It can be cloned because people can go rampant with this.
I was going to say, I mean, you've seen some of the deepfake videos, and what was the one with like Tom Cruise and all that kind of stuff, right?
Even the Trump ones now, he can speak fluent Spanish, Chinese. It's an interesting thing to see.
That's amazing. So that I guess is the stuff that especially with the upcoming election, that's what's a little, I guess, frightening, because I think I saw this on the news, or I read this, I don't remember, but there was a poll that they did, and a majority of people get their news from social media.
Social media. Yeah.
They don't actually watch the news. They get it from social media.
It's dangerous.
So that's dangerous, man. It really is insane to me, but I guess that's the world we live in now.
Well, at the most basic level, I can tell you this is true because my son will come up to me and say, "Hey, I saw this on YouTube. It has to be true." I was like, "No, it's not, son. Not everything you see."
That used to be my quote. Well, if it's on the internet, it's got to be true, right? Yeah, not so much anymore, though.
Not so much anymore. Because anything could be faked. And honestly, I could do all that stuff. But there is an ethical way to use AI that it's going to have to be done going forward, because my buddy Alex Garrido at the UTRGV, he talks a lot about the ethical use of AI, because you think about that, like there's if you have a business page on social media right now, you're getting spam messages every single day. You're getting text messages from AI bots every single day. Right. So this is going to happen more and more and more as AI becomes unleashed into the world. So you got to really understand like the way that some people aren't going to use AI ethically, and some people are. So there's going to be a huge fight over the people
I'm just
that
thinking
are
about all the scams that they could create.
Yeah, the
right?
scams. Because think about this too. Is like I can clone anybody's daughter's voice and they call their parents and ask them for money.
Well,
that's already happening
right now. That's exactly what I was thinking right now. I'm like, what if somebody cloned my kid's voice?
Think about that.
Hey, Dad, send me some money.
Yeah.
Send it to this Cash App, and there I am sending money.
That's
Don't get any
the
ideas
world.
If you're watching this, by the way.
But that's the world we're living in. I think people should really understand that this is here.
For sure.
This is here.
It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's not going
be
anywhere.
honest.
Yeah, and it's going to get worse.
And I know that there's been a lot of debate as far as, I mean, it sounds kind of weird, but so we take Terminator, right? We take some of the other AI movies that have come out in the past, and I know there's a huge debate on ethics and whether or not they should slow down on the development of AI until they can come up with some more rules, so they can, I guess, implement certain rules and guidelines as to how it's going to be created and used and all this other kind of stuff. But there's some people in certain countries that say, we don't care. We're moving forward.
It's a race. It's a race.
It really
AI
is a race.
Yeah. And that's why I think about like OpenAI with Sam Altman is like, those are the people that you want at the forefront because they have the ethics, they have the integrity, and the people that are going to charge the way is like, this is how it should be done going forward. Like there's AI that hasn't been released because it's just so far advanced. Was it
yesterday, the day before yesterday, I saw there was a military plane that was flown by AI. But they had I don't know if it was a general or somebody on the plane while AI was flying the plane.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess that was their way of showing them that it was safe. Right. But I remember it was a fighter jet or something like that, if I remember correctly. So that's the other side of that coin too, is what are they going to use it for, right?
And you think about that too, is like the AI.
We're talking about business. Let's be honest. I'm sure they're going to probably the military and
for sure. I'm sure they already have it,
and they're not already using it, right?
Yeah, and you think about that, it's like it's the worst it's ever going to be at this point. Right. Like it becomes optimized to be able to close that gap between error. Like it's going to get smarter exponentially. It's an interesting thing that I think a lot of people need to have it on their radar because it's here and it's getting embedded into every part of the Rio Grande Valley as we speak because somebody's using it. I guarantee.
I clicked on to I think it was Facebook, and they've got a little button on there now.
The Meta.
The Meta AI. Right? And then I think WhatsApp has it. I don't know if Instagram has it, but I know there's a few now that are starting to use it.
Yeah, even X has Grok. It's Twitter's AI.
Oh, there you go. See?
It's getting integrated into every little fabric of everything.
Wow.
Eventually, everything that you see on a screen, like we're doing this, will be replicated by AI. We won't even need to sit here anymore have this conversation. My podcast dreams of getting paid one day are going to be gone.
Well, as long as we all still have jobs, man, that's the main thing, right?
It's an interesting thing. Well, but before we finish off the podcast, Judge, let everybody know where they can find you.
So we're located at the courthouse in Edinburgh. I'm County Court at Law number 10. What is our number? I don't know our number.
Well, I'll put it on the description.
But you can find us on social. You can find us on Instagram and on Facebook under Judge Armando Marroquin, or Armando J. Marroquin. Sorry. And I will say this: I would love for anybody who listens to this or sees this to follow us. Please follow us. We're always asking for suggestions if you want us to do videos on certain topics. I can't practice law and I can't give legal advice, but what I can do is if there's certain issues that come up in the courts, there's certain things that we can talk about, and that's what I like to share. Whether it has to do with what to wear when you go to court, how do I get a lawyer? There's so many different topics that have come up, and we're always looking for new topics. So if anybody has any suggestions, man, please shoot us a text or a message. Sorry, DM or whoever it's called. DM,
awesome.
right? It's called DM. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm cool now. But yeah, and I want to say we are. Just the last thing is, if you're at the courthouse and if you want to come visit us, we're actually located. You walk into the courthouse, and we're in the trailer park. In front of the trailer park area that's right outside the courthouse. So you would walk in the courthouse and you'd walk out the doors to go to the trailer parks. We're right in front of the trailer parks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Judge, I appreciate your time.
Josh, thank you so much, man. Absolutely. This was great. I enjoyed talking to you, and hopefully we never see you there. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I got a friend there now.
There you go. Yes, you do. All right.
We'll see you guys in the next session. Peace.
I stumble upon Joshua Moroles podcast with special guests, Judge Mando Marroquin. At last, I grab a cold beer, sit back and relax, ready to dive into some raw, unfiltered facts. Joshua asks the questions, he's got that fire. Judge Mando's wisdom gonna take us higher. conversation flows.